Local productions seen on Delta College Public Media are made possible with support from viewers like you. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Junia Owns a Spark. I'm Junia Doan. My guest today is Ariel Rak, Senior Director of the Artificial Intelligence Transformation Program with KPMG US and Improv Enthusiast and teacher. Welcome, Ariel. Ariel, tell me about your name.
All right. So my name is Ariel, as you pronounce correctly, which not all people do. It is a biblical name in Hebrew, and it literally means line of God, and it is also one of the many names of Jerusalem.
So you're in Midland with two passions, your day job and your night job. Your day job is Senior Director of Artificial Intelligence Transformation at KPMG. So what is that all about? What does that mean, actually? We're all fascinated by artificial intelligence because we non-technical people don't have the ability to define and comprehend at the moment at a technical level.
The artificial intelligence area is very interesting. In the last year or so, there's been an explosion in capabilities around a topic called generative AI, artificial intelligence, which is focused specifically on generating content and being able to respond to prompts in a way that is not just a search engine like Google, but actually generates information based on what you're asking. So, for instance, you could go into a tool, a chat GPT, and say, write me a poem about improv that is in the style of a given poet, and it will do that to some degree or another in a successful way. At KPMG, which is one of the big four accounting and audit advisory firms in the U.S., I've been part of a large transformation internally of how to bring generative AI to how we do business, both from a client-facing perspective and an internal perspective. How do we change the way that we're delivering services to clients? How do we change the way we're doing our internal work, all of our internal systems, in the ultimate way to be, ultimate target of being faster and smarter and more efficient, and being able to do those things a lot better, and opening up more capacity for the people, because we're all about people at KPMG. That's our asset. How to enable them to be spending more time on thinking about a variety of things versus building PowerPoints and getting drowned in Excel spreadsheets and so forth.
Do we have to learn to think differently if we're not so detailed in constructing an answer?
That's a great question. I think we'll need to be focused on what each of us as an individual can do, in the sense of, we don't need to spend time on being a master spreadsheet developer or being able to write a long document that represents all of the basic structure of what we're trying to accomplish, right? If you say, for example, hey, I'd like to be able to write a document about topic XYZ, such as improv, for example, right? And you can say, write me a pitch about improv for use in business and take into consideration the fact that it is going to be, pitching a 4-hour workshop with some of the key features. It gets you past that first step of like a blank page of just putting something there. And then you can go and react to something that's on paper and not be bogged down in the writing, but not bogged down, but being able to think about the value that you bring as an improv instructor, for example, right? So how do you then translate what's on the page to something that actually makes sense for the reader, if that makes sense?
So to stay with your 4-hour course, if you wanted to say that here's what I want taught, now write me a 4-hour presentation or interactive or whatever to do that. Is it up to doing that or not yet?
I think it's up to doing a basic draft. There definitely needs to be a lot of review and a lot of then tweaking and even throwing whole parts of it away and replacing with something else. I think the technology is still in its infancy, and there's a lot of progress being made with the various aspects of the technology that's getting better. But I don't think it's not gonna replace the creative mind anytime soon, or I don't know if it at all will do that. But it just helps get started in many cases past a lot of what the blank page problem is, and being able to start getting something there to be able to then run with in a better way.
So what it's occurring to me is quite personal. When my daughter was very young, we broke down and got her an Apple II, and there was a little game on it that asked for words that would fit a number of dashes. So I'm trying to learn it for her so we know what we're doing. And the word I picked wasn't in their vocabulary. And ever after, it sort of stayed with me that don't be limited by a machine's limitations or a machine's idea. Can I toss that idea aside now as we move into AI, or is it more necessary than ever?
I think it's just as necessary. I mean, ultimately, artificial intelligence and generative AI is a lot of probability and statistics, right? I mean, it generates content based on probability models that exist based on everything it's learned, all of the documents in the internet, and there's plenty of examples of it not doing it very well. And I've gone through some trials of trying to have it generate jokes,
Oh,
and be able to do that, and every one of them almost was very weird, and I'm like, I don't even understand what you're trying to get here, explain it to me. And then it tried to explain it, and I'm like, that doesn't make too much sense. So I definitely think that there's very much a need to be paying attention. I think that there's a risk of people just taking it and using it to generate something, and it's not being correct or it's not being complete. And so there's definitely a need to be able to be thinking critically about what the output is, and maybe even more to the point is thinking correctly about how to ask the right questions so it generates the information that you want. And I think that's something that where I'm looking at a lot, right? About how do I ask it the right questions to get the data, the answer that I want.
oh, I'm glad you've taken that on that way. Uh, I, I sort of wander around in the world, asking myself questions, but I always ask, what have I missed? what if I saw it opposite or three-quarters opposite to this? How does that change my thinking, or how does that change the experience? And I'm not sure that people have time to do that throughout their life. We all come to depend on what's presented to us. But not skepticality, but the ability to say, what's more, what other shades could you put on it? What other levels are there? Can you think about it differently? A discernment, I think, is an unusual but necessary review of things. So that takes time and questions. That's why I was asking if you had to learn differently, uh, or can it be taught? Really, of course it can be taught. You just ask the question and keep going. Um, Now, you were born in Israel, right?
I was actually born in the U.S., but I grew up in Israel. I spent most of my early years up until my completion of my undergrad in Israel. Yes.
Was it a family decision? Was it a religious decision? Was it experimental? Was it a job opportunity that took your family there?
No, my father, his family came to Israel right after World War II, and
From where?
he from Poland,
Okay.
and he grew up in Israel. My mom grew up in the U.S. in New Jersey, and decided to spend some time during college or after college in Israel, and she happened to take a class with my dad, who is the teaching assistant, I think, and um, they eventually got married, and my mom decided to obviously stay in Israel. And then my dad came to Berkeley to do his PhD, and myself and my brother were born there. And when he finished that, we moved back to Israel.
But so you were about three, four, five, six,
I was
seven?
I was four, about four and a half or so.
Oh, so it wasn't a hard adjustment at that age, was it?
I don't remember it too much. I know that it was an adjustment just to learn the language, because the decision while we were in the U.S., my parents decided to be speaking English at home. Um,
Oh,
so moving back to Israel, it was just a matter of learning the language. But yeah, but since then I've been fluent in both.
and what lured you back to the States?
Um, my wife and I both finished our undergrads in Israel, and there were a couple of things. One is that as a U.S. citizen, I have or we both have the we can come and work here. I wanted to try and find opportunities. My undergrad was in computer science, so find opportunities in that space. And it was a time in Israel where my wife and I would, just from a security perspective, wanted to try something else for a little bit. And there were a number of reasons that had to do with still my being part of the reserve units and so forth, that we decided to move to the U.S. and give it just give it a shot and see what happens. And that ultimately led us to stay here longer term.
Did you come back to go to Cal Berkeley School, or that was once you got here?
That was once I got here. I had a few years of working experience in San Diego, and then decided that an MBA is a good next step, and was accepted to Berkeley and went there. And um, at Berkeley, I eventually was exposed to Dow Chemical, and they recruited me for an internship and eventually for a full-time position. And so that's what brought us initially to Midland.
Well, welcome. I'm glad you're here. That's really good. As a secondary interest, you study and do and teach improv. What is improv?
Improv is short for improvisational comedy, and it is not the same thing as stand-up. It's all made up on the spot. And so what you see is what you get, and you'll never see it again, probably. And it is, I got exposed to improv about 6 years ago or so. I started taking some classes. And then eventually, when I moved back to Midland at the beginning of the pandemic, I was looking for opportunities to do some improv here and didn't find any. So I ultimately decided to start trying to teach it, and slowly have built a little bit of a small improv group that has now been going through different levels of classes, and here we are. Beyond that, improv, I think, it's there's a lot of benefits. How to explain it? Improv is a set of short games, basically, that each have a given structure or a given set of guidelines of how to play it. They are all based on audience suggestions, and it's all about making up the content on the spot. Very much so, building on your teammates' ideas and what they do. So it is very much a supportive and team building experience. And it helps with just so many things that are good for our daily lives, professionally or personally. Like I said, team building, building on others' ideas, concentrating and observing each other, embracing failures, and just throwing yourself out there in front of an audience is always humbling, especially when you don't come with a script or anything like that. You're just at the mercy of your friends and your teammates and your audience. So I think it has a huge amount of benefits, and I enjoy it a lot.
How much or how important is the ability to physically act? I don't mean speak. What I mean is, this is success dependent on the idea, the reaction, the verbal, but is the body movement or the voice projection also a part, either negatively or positively, towards the presentation, the reaction?
I think it definitely is. Like anything you're doing in front of an audience, I mean, you do need to project. You want to connect in different senses, I think, than you would in a normal theater presentation, right? You want to connect with your audience in a much more interactive way, and so you have to sell it. You have to be able to project your voice. You have to be able to build characters on the spot, and embrace your fellow team members' characters, and you have to build a compelling relationship and interaction on stage. I would say that most of the people in my classes are not, and myself included, have no theater background, so it's just learning how to do that, and we do that in a pretty constructive way that is, again, helps people just from the very basics of improv kind of get to the point where they're able to do that.
So how much of a course is that to get them to the comfort level?
I have an 8 to 10, usually 8 to 10 week level 1. Just because it has taken time to build up the group and the critical mass. I've offered that maybe 5 or 6 times at this point, and now I'm finally at a point of finishing up a level 2 for all of those that are interested in graduates from the level 1 to be able to do a show at the end and really test their capabilities in front of an audience. So that is also an 8-week thing. So from my perspective, 8 weeks of level 1, 8 weeks of level 2, and you're in front of an audience.
And continue level 3 and 4.
We shall see.
Well,
I would
so
very much like
storytelling, right? You just run over what you'd say in the first class, for example. The purpose is what we have to learn, what we have to work with.
Improv is all about supporting each other, building on each other, working as a team, observing, concentrating, listening. All these skills that are so great in our daily lives. And it is important that we approach this together in a very supportive environment. And especially at level one, I mean, there's no pressure. We're not here to perform. We're here just to learn some of those basics and be able to get to a position where we do those things better in eight weeks or so.
What are the basics?
The core basic tenet of improv is yes and. So always agree and then build on it. So yes, you're not going to say no to someone. You're not going to say, oh, that's a silly idea, or no, that doesn't make sense. You're always going to, no matter what the idea is, you're going to say, that's great. And then you're going to add to it from yourself, from your perspective. So if someone says, they're going to be, or they are in a little scene, a possum farmer, then you're going to be like, yes, of course you are. And I'm here to help you raise possums, and we'll all make a lot of money doing that. And it just builds from there. So that's the core improv tenet. Beyond that, again, everything I've said, it's observing each other, concentrating and listening, embracing failure. Don't be afraid of making a mistake or sounding silly. I mean, there's really no ways to fail as long as you're enjoying it.
So the idea is to start and extend it as a story.
That is definitely one form of it is building up a story, and being able to build a scene that is just basically 2 or 3 or more characters that are evolving in the interaction among them. And then there are various different other kinds of games that have a very specific structure. So, for example, a dating game type scenario where you have a bachelor or bachelorette and 3 more characters, and that bachelor needs to ultimately, by the questions they ask, need to guess what each of these characters are. So the audience feeds suggestions for those 3 characters, and the bachelor or bachelorette doesn't know what they are. He or she is standing outside the room in a quiet area, and then comes back and starts asking questions to tease out who the characters are. And of course, those characters are being very over the top with their characteristics. And it's a very enjoyable game to both watch and to play. And there are many more.
Do you encourage your wife and children in this direction too, as a family hobby?
My wife has joined a couple of classes, and she's like, okay, this is great, but probably not going to be something she continues to do. My son is a lot more, he's the one that inspired me to go into this originally. He's a lot more of a theater kid, musical theater kid. So he's definitely done some improv classes, but he's more focused on traditional musical theater.
So when you went to school, for improv, what kinds of things or categories did they teach you or get you to understand?
I went to a couple of different improv schools, one in New Jersey, one in New York. They have different approaches slightly. One was a lot more based on building scenes and building up those things with the relationships in the scene and the interaction between the characters. The second school was a lot more focused on what I'm doing now, which is these games that are different types of games and different types of structures that are usually much shorter, and you have many of them in one show, so maybe 15 or 20 of them in a show, different games, and they tend to be high energy and just a good starting point for improv, where as in Midland, we don't have an active improv scene, so I think that's a good starting point.
For you.
Yeah.
You were in the Israeli Defense Forces for some years. What did they teach you that carried over to your current life? What did you learn that carries over into your current life?
Yeah, I was a platoon leader in a company XO in the executive officer in the Israeli Defense Forces. Um, uh, the things that have stayed with me, and that this was 25 years ago, right? But things that stay with me is a lot of leadership skills, um, and being able to think well under pressure and not be reactive to a lot of what the noise is around. Um, Very few instances in most of our daily lives have implications of life or death. And so I think it is that helps you put everything in a good proportion, good perspective, sorry, and not be, you know, buckled to too much pressure for something that doesn't have a life or death implication at the end of it. Ultimately, I've
Thank you.
always
So
yeah.
sorry we have to end, but I really appreciated your time and generosity because I have learned, as you did from the IDF, stay with the basics of what's necessary and important. And two, learn what you have to do to be successful, hence your schooling and professional job, and also respond to family desires and so forth. And learn something new. So you were a newbie at one time in this too, and good for you. So I thank you for appearing, and I also remind everybody to go out and do something kind today and tomorrow, but for someone you know and someone you don't know. And hurry back, and I'll see you next time.
All
Thank
right,
you,
thank you.
Ariel. Very good.
To contact Junia, send her an email at juniadonsthespark@gmail.com. For more information, program schedules, and news about future guests, go to www.juniadonthespark.com. Thank you for joining us. See you next time on Junia Doan's The Spark.
Local productions seen on Delta College Public Media are made possible with support from viewers like you. Thank you.